Hello everyone, welcome to my kitchen again. So today I'm going to demonstrate pancakes for you so you can see how to make scratch pancakes. That's without a box mix or a bag mix. That way you have that skill for the rest of your life. So today I'm going to make the apple cinnamon pancakes. You can choose any variety of pancake, but I'm going to do the apple cinnamon so I can demonstrate that. I'm also going to go over some griddle safety because we are going to use the flat top griddle to make the pancakes, but you can use a stovetop and just use a frying pan to make these, or you can put them on a baking sheet and make them as one big pancake and then cut them up afterwards after you bake them in the oven. You have lots of choices for this and don't feel like you have to do everything exactly as I do it. You also can choose your variety. I provided you with 4, but you can choose whatever kind of pancakes you like, or maybe you'd like to do just normal pancakes. This recipe also, because it's a quick bread recipe, can be made into muffins. So you can very easily just take this recipes, make it, and then bake it into little muffins and have it to eat as muffins. So as I mentioned, you have a lot of choices. The recipes that I provided you were apple cinnamon, blueberry, strawberry, chocolate chip, and banana. So you can choose any of those, or you can do some kind of variation, or you can try to play around and try something different. You can make whatever variety you'd like and just submit your video and or your picture after you're done. Special thing about this particular lab is that we're making something called quick breads. Quick breads use either a baking soda or baking powder as their leavening agent. That's what makes the baked good rise up. So muffins, pancakes, zucchini bread, banana bread, all of those are quick breads, and you have to be very careful with quick breads, and there are some rules that you have to follow. So rule number 1 is that you need to have separate bowls for wet and dry ingredients. So you put all of your wet ingredients into one bowl, all your dry ingredients into another bowl. Usually you have to sift your dry ingredients, which I'll go over in another part of the video, and you would keep them separate, having measured everything before you combine them together, okay? And that's the other rule with quick breads, pancakes, muffins, banana, zucchini bread, whatever you make the choice to make. Do not overmix. If you overmix, the dough is going to become tough. The batter is going to not have the correct texture when you bake it or cook them. All right, everybody, for the ingredients for this recipe, again, we want to keep the wet ingredients and the dry ingredients separate until the recipe tells us to put them together. So for this recipe, I'm going to do 2 eggs, and I'm going to crack them directly into a liquid measuring cup. I'm going to need 1 cup of milk. So I've just measured 1 cup of milk. I need 2 tablespoons of butter melted. So I did this prior to including it in my ingredients. So I've melted this butter. Be careful with melting butter. You don't want to go too fast. Start with a couple of seconds and kind of work up from there. Usually it's about 20 seconds. And then for this variety, I'm going to do apple cinnamon pancakes. So I actually took my apples and I grated them into little pieces using a grater. So this grater, I want to use the largest holes on the grater, and then I just take an apple and I just grate it directly into the bowl, and then I've got this. Now my apples are starting to brown because they've been out in the air. I could throw a little bit of lemon juice if I have that in my fridge to keep them from browning, but I'm not so concerned with that because we're going to cook them anyway. And then this core is going to go into my compost so we can start making stuff for our garden. And then for our dry ingredients, which we are keeping separate, I've got my sifter in the bowl, and then I actually measure directly into the sifter, and then I'm going to sift the ingredients into this bowl. If you do not have a sifter at your house, you have a couple of options. If you have a strainer, you can use a strainer to kind of get all of the clumps out and to go through and incorporate air. If you don't have any of those, then take a whisk and then just whisk the dry ingredients by themselves without putting anything else not putting the wet ingredients in. So whisk it to kind of incorporate that air and to get some of the lumps out. That's like a cheating way to kind of sift your ingredients. So for my dry ingredients, I need 1 cup of sifted all-purpose white flour, half a cup of whole wheat flour. If you don't have whole wheat flour at your house, please don't go out and buy any. You can just substitute white flour, so you would use 1.5 cups of white flour. Then you also need a half a teaspoon of baking powder, and a fourth of a teaspoon of salt, 6 tablespoons, which equals 3/4 cup of sugar, and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon for this particular variety. So for this part of the video, I want to talk about griddle safety, because if you're going to use a griddle at your house, I'd like you to know some things and that feel comfortable and feel confident in using the griddle at your house. So if you have a griddle, looks like this. Mine is copper. Yours may be stainless steel or have some kind of other material, possibly black Teflon. We do have 4 in my classroom, which we would normally be doing this lab on the griddles to make the pancakes. So with your griddle safety, there are some things that I'd like you to keep in mind when you're working with your griddle. Number 1, this is a hot. Okay, it's very hot, so don't touch any part of this because it's going to burn you. Other specialty things, most griddles have an attachment cord, so this would be plugged into the griddle. And make sure you plug it in correctly. I wouldn't turn it on until you need to preheat. So before you start your recipe, I would suggest preheating your griddle so that you can get it up to temperature. If you're making the choice to make muffins, then you would preheat your oven. If you're making the choice to make pancakes in the oven, again, preheat your oven. If you're making the choice to use a frying pan on the stovetop because that's what you have access to, then just turn on your pan, but don't get it too hot because then it will burn the pan or cooking spray that you put in there, okay? We do want to preheat the griddle, and we may need to put on some cooking spray. We're going to do a very little bit of cooking spray, or we can put a very fine layer of butter on here to keep the pancakes from sticking. Mine is, because it's copper, it actually nothing sticks to mine, so I don't need to put the cooking spray on because that's just going to cause it to heat up the oil and the cooking spray and make it really difficult to clean, okay? So I'm going to turn on my griddle. The recipe says that it needs to be at 325. And mine doesn't have a 325, it has 300 and 350. So I'm going to find the spot between 300 and 350 to preheat it to. And I'm going to turn it on and get it going. I also need to make sure when I'm done using the griddle, I want it to cool down. You can take a wet washcloth or a sponge and wipe the entire griddle down before it's completely cool. That won't hurt it or damage it. You just need to be careful with the steam that comes from the hot plate. And then you would want to put it away after you're done using it. So I'm going to let this heat up. It's going to heat up to correct temperature so that we can go ahead and make our pancakes. Okay, so part 1 continued of the recipe. Step 2 says to, in a large bowl, sift together the flour, sugar, baking powder, cinnamon, and salt. So I've put all of those ingredients into my sifter, and I'm just going to sift those ingredients down through my sifter to incorporate air, get any lumps out. And I'm going to knock it around a little bit. Then keep going until I have that beautiful dry ingredients all nice and sifted. And their air is incorporated and there's no lumps in there. Really important, don't do anything else with this because you don't want to lose that sifting that you just did. Okay, so this part of the recipe says to put butter in a liquid measuring cup, microwave for 20 seconds. I did it in a little bowl. I'm going to pour this in to my pre-measured milk. So this is in with my milk. And then I'm going to take my eggs and crack them in as well. And again, Mrs. Winomski composts at her house, so I have my eggshells going to go in my compost. And then I'm just going to use a fork to kind of blend this together because very important. Quick breads need to have your ingredients separated from wet and dry before you put them together in your mixer to make your batter, okay? So now I've got my milk, my egg, and my butter all in here. And then it actually tells me to take my grated apple and add my grated apple to this as well. So I'm just going to pour that grated apple directly in to that liquid mixture. I'm going to give this a quick little stir. Okay, next step is to create a small well in the middle of the dry ingredients. So I just move without pushing too hard on those dry ingredients. Move them around so I create a little well in the center. And then I'm going to pour my wet ingredients into the center of that bowl. Okay, and I'm going to try to get all of this out of here. And this is rule number 2 with quick breads is you do not want to overmix. So you're going to very slowly, carefully incorporate those liquids together with that dry ingredients. And I'm just going to mix until I don't see any more dry and give it a couple of quick turns. Now, pancakes or quick breads are a batter, not a dough. So they should be more liquidy than they are dry. So cookie dough, like we made last week, was more of a dry dough. This is, or like the bread dough that we're going to make later this week, is going to be more solid. This is more liquid, and that's what we want for pancakes or muffins. We want to have that. So I'm going to stop mixing because I don't want to overmix my batter. And then I'm going to take and move everything to actual cooking part. Okay, so my griddle is preheated. I have my recipe made. I've got the stuff ready and prepared. So now I'm going to take my pancake batter and I'm going to put it onto the griddle and actually cook the pancakes. In most of the restaurant industry, they use ice cream scoops or these size scoops to kind of work with cookies or with cupcakes or muffins or anything, because then you get an equal size every time. I like using it because it's an easy way to add the pancakes to the griddle. So I'm just going to take and scoop up my batter, and I'm going to put it onto the griddle. And I'm going to do 2 scoops because I want to make the pancakes a little bit bigger. And there. Now, this recipe does make approximately 16 pancakes if you do them as 1 scoop like this size. Depends on what your family will eat and how you want to make yours. Mine, I'm probably going to only get 6 out of this because I actually did a half recipe. But I'm going to let these cook. They need to cook on one side. I want to see some bubbles on the top here before I'm going to flip them. So I'm going to let them cook a little bit. And then I'm going to take a flat spatula and I'm going to flip them over so they can cook on the other side. And then I'm going to garnish them and set them up on a plate so you can see what they're supposed to look like. So I'm going to let them cook and I'll show you the next phase. All right, so this is what we're looking for. We need to have these bubbles appearing on the pancakes. We want them to, I hope you can see, we want them to have those bubbles. And then we're going to actually flip the pancakes over. So I'm going to show you that part right now. So I'm just going to grab underneath the pancake. I'm going to take the whole thing. I'm going to flip it over. And I'm going to flip this one so it's ready. And this guy is ready. And this guy is ready. So I've got them cooking on this side, and I'm going to show you the garnishing / setup next. So stay tuned. All right, so I was letting these cook on the other side. I'm just going to flip them to check to see that they're cooked through on the other side. I'm going to make sure that they're cooked well. I'll flip them all back over and let them cook for a minute more, or like 10 more seconds or so. And I'm going to get my plate and set up my plating. And while I'm finishing up my last 2, and then I'll make my garnish for you, I just want to remind you that Mother's Day is coming up this weekend, and that if your mom is more of a sweet breakfast person, this would be a great present for your mother or mother figure in your life, to make them breakfast pancakes or the omelets that I'm going to have you do next. Either would be a fantastic gift for the special mother figure in your life for this weekend. All right, so I've got my finished pancakes. I've got a stack of beautiful apple cinnamon pancakes that I'm going to share with my family. I'm going to plate one and do some pretty garnish on it to show you kind of what it should look like and that you can try that out. A couple of things with the griddle. Make sure that you remember to turn it off when you're done and let it cool down, and then you should wipe it down and then store it properly wherever it goes in your house. And that lots of people like to have maple syrup on theirs. We have 100% pure maple syrup, but whatever syrup you have at your house. I also prefer to put jelly on mine, so I will put jelly on mine. You could also put peanut butter. You could